Hi, I'm Dahlia Stroud and I host the Stressed But Well Dressed podcast. In this season of Stressed But Well Dressed, we're recording in collaboration with SmartWorks. Stressed But Well Dressed brings conversations to life on the link between clothes and confidence, helping listeners to understand what it really means to feel well dressed and recognising that that feeling starts from within. In each episode of this series, we will go behind the scenes of SmartWorks, sharing stories from the CEO, coaches and clients, and taking a look inside the wardrobe that will clothe over 10,000 women each year as part of their journey to employment. At SmartWorks, every woman is treated as an individual. SmartWorks knows that when a woman walks through our doors, she needs space, no judgment and kindness, and that's what the charity provides. Fashion can be an incredible force for good. When a woman looks and feels great about who she is, she can change her life. The right outfit can allow a woman to stand taller, feel relaxed and confident, and give her best in an interview. Dressing for interviews can feel daunting, but SmartWorks' dedicated volunteers make clients feel so at ease. It sounds deceptively simple, but the right outfit really does have the ability to change a whole woman's approach to an interview and lead to job success. That empowerment is so important to everything SmartWorks does. Clothing, confidence, coaching and community, those are the simple building blocks of the transformative SmartWorks service, which power a woman into employment. SmartWorks supported more than 10,000 women last year alone, but they can't do it alone. SmartWorks need you to join their mission at SmartWorks Charity and be a part of something incredible. Hi, I'm Dahlia and you're listening to Stressed But Well Dressed. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Anna Hemmings, CEO of SmartWorks. Good morning, Anna.
Hi, Dahlia. Thanks for having me.
I've really been looking forward to this collaboration and this opportunity to go behind the scenes at SmartWorks, hear more about what the organisation does and drive awareness for the amazing work you do to support women across the UK. And I know we're going to talk a bit about your role as CEO, how you see the organisation and that work. But first, and I've just thrown this on you, Anna, so I'm really intrigued to see what you're going to say. I'm going to ask you what your most memorable fashion moment is.
Yeah, I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? This is such a tricky question because it's hard to pin one down, isn't it? But I think my most memorable moments are connected to sort of important events in my life. Either like I had a civil partnership recently with my partner or other weddings that I've been to, those kind of significant moments. I think I really sort of connect what I'm wearing with how I'm feeling, which is such a theme, obviously, that we're going to talk about. So I think those kind of moments for me are the big moments. But then also, I think it was really exciting to see last year at London Fashion Week that Oxfam and some of the other charities are beginning to do fashion shows and really shine a light on that kind of fashion and sustainability issue that we need to be exploring. So if I had to pick a couple, those are the sorts of things I'd choose.
Yeah, and I think we attach so much emotion to what we wear. So those moments or those milestones in our life where we remember wearing something where we feel good or, you know, something really special happened are so important. And a huge part of that obviously takes place in SmartWorks. So tell me more about the charity and your role as CEO.
Yeah, sure. So SmartWorks has been around for a good 10 years now, actually. And it was established really for unemployed women to give them both clothing and confidence and skills in going into employment. So for unemployed women, we'll offer them a dressing appointment where they can get a full interview appropriate outfit to wear to their interview. And that really enhances their confidence. And you can see that very visibly during the dressing process, that people sort of really look much more confident by the end of that. And then we also offer interview coaching so people can explore their skills and build interview skills. And it's really that combination of skills and confidence that I think helps women to be successful at interview. And around 65% of the people we see have a job within a month. So it's it's kind of a amazingly simple but yet hugely effective model. That's what I love about it. So yeah, it's brilliant.
And I think what's really interesting is that I know from conversations I've had that you help people identify an outfit that's going to make them feel good, and then you do the coaching once they're in that mindset of well dressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if you build people's confidence, they are much more able to articulate their skills clearly and explore those skills and explain their CV well and really perform well in interviews. So yeah, it's done that way round for a reason.
So What's your own perspective then on personal style and clothing choices, and how they can really kind of impact how you show up, particularly in professional settings? Because obviously this is about helping people move into employment, so they are transitioning into a professional setting, maybe from a home environment, and thinking about what they put on and their identity.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting issue, because I think it's very twofold. I think that for most people, clothes are sort of somehow a reflection of yourself in some way.
Yeah.
So it's about clothes that make you feel good and confident, and that you feel sort of comfortable and positive wearing. But I also know that people want to look sort of right, however they perceive that to be, for their environment. So if they're in an office environment, then they want to sort of fit in with the dress code there, or different environments require different sorts of outfits or whatever. So it's a bit of a matching process, isn't it, of feeling that you're going to fit in your environment, but also be yourself and express yourself and feel confident in who you are.
Yeah, I think that kind of getting the balance right between feeling yourself but also feeling like you belong is not sometimes an easy one, particularly when it's a new environment for you to step into, and you are looking to build your confidence. You might not have been for an interview for a while, or even ever before, and thinking about actually how you find something that makes you feel like you have the right to be there, but also that you can be yourself is so important. And I know obviously there are huge barriers to people in terms of building that confidence and moving either into employment for the first time or back into employment. Can you talk to me more about some of the barriers that you try to overcome at SmartWorks?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of barriers. The women that we see come from such a wide range of backgrounds, and have all had different life experiences. And I suppose that sort of shapes you in so many ways, and can be very positive, but also can create barriers as well. So some women will face barriers around work history or experience, and in that case, it's about often using life experience to explain how that's contributed to you developing different skills. Some women face barriers because of practical issues like childcare or other caring responsibilities, or their own health problems. So it's about exploring how we can encourage women to talk about flexibility at work, or help them to get practical arrangements in place. But often barriers are around things like confidence and how you explain your skill set. And that's stuff that we can really help with at SmartWorks. And what we see in our results is that helping women to build that skills and confidence combination really does help them overcome some of the barriers. Maybe not all, because obviously, there's a lot to consider in going into work, particularly if you've been out of work for a long time. But yeah, I think the barriers are very mixed, but they're also generally can be overcome for most people.
I think that point around being able to articulate your skills is a really tough one, and I know so many people struggle with it. But particularly if it's something that you are unfamiliar with, I've done these different jobs, but how do I really position myself for my next role, or how do I recognise that some of the work that I've done that someone wouldn't kind of, I guess, typically say is work or professional experience, but does give me the skills I need to be able to go on and succeed, is something that I know a lot of people struggle with. How do you help people see actually they do have the experience and they do have what it takes, and build that inner confidence?
Well, it's a really interesting combination, isn't it? Because as you say, we do the dressing first, so that really does help people to see themselves in the situation of an interview, in the role, but also feel really good about themselves, feel confident, and that is a lift, straight away. And then when you start to explore skills, it's really interesting how people sort of don't connect personal life experience with work-related skills. Yeah. And it's sort of like a light bulb moment sometimes when you talk through with people the skills they will have in organisation, in prioritisation, in kind of getting through quite a large number of tasks. There's so many skills that we have in day-to-day life that are relevant, but people almost don't value them or don't connect them to work sufficiently. So I think it's just about helping people see that in the first instance, and then articulate that in the second instance, and also sort of think themselves into the role. When I don't know if you interview people for a job, but when you're in a job interview situation, quite often what you're looking for is someone to think themselves into the role and what it would be like to work for your organisation. So we can help with all of those things, but I think people are a little bit sort of siloed sometimes in how they think about things. They think the only experience that's relevant for a job interview is job experience, and that's not the case at all. And increasingly, I think in this day and age, a lot of companies are hiring with quite a focus on culture and fit as well. So who you are becomes much more part of that interview process, and being able to articulate what's important to you in that scenario is quite a big factor in interviews as well.
That idea of thinking yourself into a role, I can really understand how powerful that is, but also how polarizing that might be if you don't necessarily believe that you have the right to be in that role. So it is a mindset piece that really needs to be addressed with people, I can imagine, as part of the coaching, to help them realise that they can go on and succeed, and they can be part of an organisation, and they can think themselves into that role. The piece that I'm interested in your view on is, what does that look like from an inclusivity perspective, particularly as you referenced before, organisations are really thinking about cultural fit, but sometimes that does default into, well, it's a cultural fit that fits with us, not about bringing diversity in. How do you get people to think that what is unique to them can really add value?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting issue that you raise, actually. And I think organisational culture is really interesting to explore, and it's certainly something that's really important to me. And the reason it's important to me is that I think organisations are so much stronger when they do have an inclusive culture that embraces a range of ways of thinking and people from different backgrounds and diversity of thought, essentially. And I think increasingly, or I'd like to think increasingly, employers recognise that. But that is variable. So I'm fortunate to work in a sector where I think that is seen as important, but it's the extent to which it's seen as important is variable in different sectors. So I think it can be tricky, but I think it's about being able to articulate your strengths, whatever those strengths are, and how you can apply those strengths in the role that you've applied for. But I think, I mean, in thinking about this role at SmartWorks, for me, I think the culture piece is really critical. And I think it's important that we walk the walk, if you like. So we're supporting women into employment, but we have to be a great employer as well. And being a great employer is about a lot of things, isn't it? And, you know, a lot of times I think people think about the benefits or the opportunities or the pay that's connected to a role. And those things are all really important. But in a way, I think the biggest thing that affects how you feel at work day in, day out is, you know, what it feels like to work there. Is it a nice place to work? Are the people nice? Does it feel inclusive? Can you be your whole self at work? Can you be, you know, honest about things that are going on in your life? And creating that, I think, is really critical to the success of any organisation, but it's definitely a priority for me here at SmartWorks.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think, you know, how you feel going to work says everything about how you will then perform in the job, and I guess how much of yourself you'll be willing to give to that job, and what you will take back for it in terms of personal reward and not just kind of monetary reward. And that is so important in terms of that feeling of actual true success. I will ask you, and this isn't on our paper, Anna, but how did you think yourself into the CEO role? What were the steps for you?
Well, I knew of SmartWorks because I'd sort of read about it over the years, and I feel really passionately about women's employability issues and sort of gender inequality issues more generally. So I was really, really keen on this role. And so through the application process, I guess I was fortunate in the sense that I have been a CEO for a number of years. So I've got an understanding, at least, of sort of the basic requirements of any CEO role. But what I did with SmartWorks in the application, or indeed what I guess I'd do with any application process, is really do your research. So I read everything I could about the organisation. I read all of the annual reports. I was all over the website. I talked to people to see if I, knew anyone who knew the organisation. And I also looked at the evidence base around women's equalities issues in the workplace. And obviously, we're in a period now where some of those EDI type initiatives are almost in reverse, really.
Yeah,
we're not in a time
at risk, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. And that's so disappointing. And so it feels like there's never been a more important time to be doing this kind of work. So I sort of did my homework, did loads of research, and also had ideas, really thought about what would I want to do in this role. And you always have to accept that the reality is a bit different than what you imagine at the interview stage. So it's not like you come in with a sort of prescribed set of ideas, but to bring ideas I think is really important, and to be able to articulate why this issue is important to you and what you might bring is really helpful through the interview process. And obviously, it's a tricky process, isn't it? There was a number of stages for me, and you never quite know how you're doing, but all you can do is try and be yourself and make sure you've done your homework and be as prepared as you can be. And fortunately, it paid off. So I'm just delighted to be here. I've only been here since January, so I'm sort of in that moment now where I'm not really new, but still feel slightly new, if you know what I mean.
Still learning about the organisation.
Yeah.
And you're right, interviews are tricky, even if you've experienced many of them, it's always daunting to be on the interviewee side of the table, and it doesn't always work out. For women who've been through the SmartWorks journey, they've had the outfit, they've had the coaching, you've built up their confidence, and then, that unfortunately they don't get the interview and they need to repeat the process. How do you help to build their resilience when they are potentially at their most vulnerable?
I mean, it is tough, isn't it? And what we're seeing through our unemployment index, we're seeing a worsening job market at the moment, and women having to apply for more and more roles before they get success. But that means more and more no's along the way. And I do think that confidence is something that erodes very gradually, and sometimes you don't actually realise your confidence has eroded. It's a funny one. It's very difficult. But I guess what I think is important is from every interview to try and get feedback. And I know not all organisations do this, but actually I've seen some client feedback recently of women who didn't get the job they were going for, but did have very positive feedback and have been encouraged to apply perhaps for different roles in the same organisation. And so they actually have felt that they've taken something from that. And although they didn't get the job, it was still a positive experience. So I think getting that feedback's critical. And thinking about what you can learn from the process and apply to the next process is important. I also think to some extent, you sort of have to think that if you don't get the role, it wasn't the right role for you, it wasn't the right fit or whatever, and that the right role is out there. It's just a question of, finding that sort of jewel really of the perfect role for you. So I think it's partly about being able to roll with it and just sort of go with the process and try not to take it too personally. But all of those things are so easy to say and so hard to do. I mean, we've all had knockbacks and no's from jobs, and it does make you feel a bit, flat maybe, or it does affect your confidence. And it's a question of being able to sort of dust yourself down and go again, I think. And I'm not going to pretend that's easy or that we've got the solutions to that, but being able to talk about it, get feedback, think about what you could do differently next time, and just keep chipping away at it, I think is what people need to do.
And it's a mindset piece, isn't it? So obviously, what I'm interested to know is you can give someone an outfit, you can give them the coaching, but how do you truly understand that they're there in terms of mindset, that readiness to move to the stage of interview?
I mean, it's really about talking it all through with somebody. So I think a big part of that is understanding someone's backgrounds. What are the drivers for them looking for this particular type of work? Are they applying, what are their skills and their aptitudes and their interests? And are they applying those to the kind of roles that will utilise them really well? I think people tend to be happiest at work when it's a job that really suits. If you're a very social person, then certain types of role will suit you. If you're more of an introvert, then a different type of role will suit you. And I think if you've got that skills match, that's to the role, that's really important. And so I think understanding someone's background, interests, skills, abilities, and then how those apply to the role are a significant part of understanding someone's kind of drivers, if you like, and being able to build on that with specific interview skills is really important.
And I'm guessing at SmartWorks, a key part of it for you will be having coaches and dressers who support the clients who come in and use your service, that really understand what it means to get the best out of each individual. So not just finding a corporate outfit for someone, but finding the outfit that's truly going to empower them, giving them the coaching that they need that's unique to them based on, like you said, their background and what they need to believe about themselves to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. And you're absolutely right that mindset is critical. And in a way, you can see that in sort of social media world where manifesting has become such a sort of big thing, which is really all about mindset. But yeah, our coaches and dressers are all volunteers, so they're incredible because they're giving their time for free, but they're also hugely experienced professional people, and they're brilliant at what they do. So they are fantastic at really getting, firstly, the confidence up through the perfect outfit for the type of interview that a woman's going to, but then working through that skill set as well. And they're just so good at building that combination of skills and confidence and helping people enter the room on the day of the interview in the right mindset, feeling positive and being able to, and if you're in that mindset, then you are going to express your skills really well. You're going to interview well if you feel good and, have really thought it through.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and a big shout out to your coaches and dressers. So we will be interviewing some of these as we do this collaboration, and I'm super excited to get their perspective. Obviously, you said you joined in January, so you're still relatively new to SmartWorks. Are there any specific stories that have really moved you, either that you've heard since you joined or that inspired you to get involved?
I mean, there's loads, actually. There's sort of stories almost every day that are just incredibly inspiring. We work with fantastic women who, it's just amazing the stuff we hear. So to give you a couple of examples, there was we've had some Ukrainian women come through the service who had to leave their homes in Ukraine quite suddenly and leave their husbands or partners behind. So have often come to this country with children and are living with host families. And to be able to dress them and support them into work has made a massive difference to them in terms of settling, being able to provide for their children, having kind of structure and routine and making friendships and integrating. And they've been through so much. I just cannot imagine what it's like to have to uproot and just leave suddenly everything that you know behind and your loved ones behind and come to somewhere where, realistically it's not your home initially, but they are finding ways to settle, and not only that, but ways to thrive as well, which is just incredible. So that's one example, and another example is of someone who I was talking to recently who wanted to study medicine, but her A levels were in the pandemic and she struggled to get the grades, so she had to start to think a little bit differently. And she felt that because her background, she was a carer for her parents, and she was from a background where she felt she just couldn't afford the type of clothes that she saw women wearing in Victoria Station when they were sort of speed walking to work or whatever. And what the dressing really gave her was that sense that she could fit in with that world. She was going for an interview, I think with PwC actually, and the clothes that she wore made a huge difference to her being able to think herself into the role because she felt like she looked like she would fit in. And she's been hugely successful at what she's done. But she's someone that is very, very talented, but just sort of lacked confidence in her abilities. And the support that we've given has just really helped her connect to some of those talents that she's got and express them at interview.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, two very different examples there. One where people have just completely had the rugs kind of pulled from under them, or the carpet pulled from under them, in terms of, they're living a life, they've got everything they need, and then suddenly they've got to reset up somewhere else with nothing and start again. And it's, where do I even start? So the confidence that it takes to move into a new country, kind of get into a new culture, you might obviously not speak English, and then go out and get a job when you have nothing and you're staying with a host family. You can't even begin to imagine, how many different things must be going on in your mind at that time, not forgetting that they'll have left loved ones in a war situation, to then even think, how do I start? So someone putting their arm around them and saying, we can help you, we can support you, is just so powerful to give them that moment that they need, I guess, for them, because in all of that, they probably don't have a lot of time to think about them and what they need and how they take their step forward. So showing them that care is massive. And the other example as well, you see it so many times. You're in a situation, you're in an environment, but if you don't feel like you could fit into that environment or you could be part of it, like you said, that the thinking yourself into it just doesn't happen. So helping people along the way to say, you can do this, it's amazing to be able to do that in your role every day.
Yeah, yeah, it's a real privilege. It really, yeah, it's amazing.
So if people are listening to this and they're thinking about actually how do they might not need the support from a SmartWorks perspective, but they might be struggling with their inner confidence. What advice would you give them about using clothes to start to build up that view of who they want to be?
I think some of this is about how you sort of knowing yourself and understanding yourself.
Yeah.
So I think partly it's about understanding who you are and your kind of skills, abilities, interests, but then also in terms of clothes, what makes you feel good? What do you feel comfortable wearing? What do you fit? You know, what colours do you like, and what suits you? What kind of styles and shapes? And just choosing clothes that just feel right. And it's very sort of it's a harder thing to explain, but you generally know when something feels right, don't you? And so I think it's about choosing sometimes a very small number of items actually that you just feel like your best self in. And I think beyond clothes, it's also about the rest: shoes, jewelry, hair. One of the things that I often do for job interviews or any sort of important moment is wear jewelry that belonged to my mum or my grandmother or my son made me or has been given to me as a gift, and sort of connects me to the people that are the most important to me. And for me, that helps my confidence in some way. It's quite difficult to explain, but I like to have that connection of my loved ones around me represented in the jewelry that I'm wearing. So things like that, just sort of finding the things that help you and matter to you, I think are the key aspects of it, really. And then from there, it's that kind of feeling good then bounces you into how can I best articulate my skills and abilities and interest in this role, and how I might fit and work in this organisation.
Yeah, I definitely, I think that is so lovely in terms of those pieces of jewellery that have that true kind of meaning for you because of the connection that it gives you to someone else that is a loved one, that is important to you, and kind of, they're there supporting you, they've got your back in that moment in terms of what you're wearing. But I agree, it's not always easy to describe what it is that makes someone feel good, that intangible in terms of clothing. But from my perspective, it's very much about that effortless, when you're not thinking about what you're wearing, you're not conscious of it, you're not feeling it, whether it's digging into your skin or holding you up or whatever it is, and you can just breathe in it and relax. That's when you, from my perspective, are able to step into your confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And yeah, and it's just understanding what does feel most comfortable, isn't it? Some people prefer trousers, some people prefer dresses. It's just some like heels, some like flats. It's just, what works for you, isn't it? And everyone's so different where that's concerned.
And I guess that's why it's so important for SmartWorks, and we'll hear from Victoria, the head of wardrobe, but to have a range of outfits to cater for such a diverse mix of needs of people coming through the doors of your, is it 11 centres you've got in the UK now?
Yeah, no, you're right. The needs are incredibly diverse because it's, obviously there's sort of different types of women, but also different types of jobs that they're going for as well. So what's interview appropriate for one role is quite different to another role. So yeah, the range of things that we have is huge actually, and we're very lucky that we've got fantastic partners in the retail space and individual donors as well who give us such a broad range of clothing. There's not many occasions where we can't meet people's needs, I don't think.
And what are your hopes and dreams for SmartWorks? So you joined in January. Obviously, you will have your view as CEO of where you want to take the organisation in the next 12, 18 months, and even in the next 5 to 10 years of where it's heading. What do you see SmartWorks being in the future?
Well, yeah, at the moment, it's quite a tough environment for charities, to be honest, because any sort of, how we've got a lot of global instability at the moment, and that always affects both charities as well as the business sector. So at the moment, it's about kind of stabilising and thinking about how we do what we do best. And then in the longer term, it's very much about being able to extend our services in a whole range of different ways. So, for example, we want to have greater accessibility, so more national coverage to more women, whether we do that in person or online. We will explore, but that's definitely something that we'd like to be looking at. And then also looking at a kind of approach that is tailored to women throughout their life stages. So I think we'd like to be a kind of go-to organisation for women at any time they find themselves unemployed. And that does happen at different moments in people's lives, doesn't it? So I think it's about recognising that maybe what a younger woman might need at the start of her career is slightly different to somebody who's older or been off work for caring reasons or health reasons, or a menopausal woman. And all of those women have some needs that are very similar, but other needs that will vary. So it's about how can we tailor what we do to different life stages and different needs, and how can we make sure that people know that they can come back if we help them once. If they find themselves unemployed in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, I would like to think that they might think of us and come back to us. So it's about being that sort of touchstone through those moments where women might need our services. And the other thing that we're interested in exploring is how we can speak more for our client group, really. We produce an unemployment index every year, which is the sort of collective experiences of about 5,000 of our clients. And we see about 10,000 women a year. And there's incredible information and data in that, which is really useful. And so I mentioned earlier that the job market's quite tough and people are applying for more jobs. They're spending more time applying, many hours every week, which is very hard. And we make a number of recommendations within that report. So I think using that more and having more to say about some of these issues to try and improve the experience of women more generally as they go through job interviews, but also in the workplace, I think that's really important. And we also touched on earlier the fact that organisational culture is really important, but it can feel as exclusive, in the wrong scenario, as inclusive. So I think it's really important that we speak up in those ways and try and be an organisation that is diverse and does welcome diversity and really is connected to those equalities issues.
Yeah, I resonate with so much of what you're saying, and the job market is changing so much. We're seeing AI come in more in terms of kind of, I guess, filtering people out for interviews, which just makes building a really rich and diverse culture even harder sometimes. And I know, having stood in the new Leeds space for SmartWorks yesterday morning, the demand is growing in terms of the women who need the service. So I think, was it 10,000 women that you serviced last year through SmartWorks? Do you know how big the real demand is in the UK in terms of potential to support?
Well, it's an interesting question because there's the unemployment figures, and we know that the government's really keen on economic productivity. So I think it's around 700,000 women unemployed. But if you look at economic inactivity, that number is much higher. And some of those women won't want to work and are absolutely fine in the circumstances they're in. They don't want to be in the job market. But there are also lots of women who are unemployed, sometimes long-term unemployed, but are not claiming benefits and are therefore a little bit invisible to the system, if you like. So I think there is an awful lot of need out there and an awful lot of demand out there and an awful lot of different ways that we can explore to sort of meet those needs and demands as well. So yeah, we're doing brilliantly. Reaching 10,000 women is fantastic and a huge achievement for SmartWorks. It was a huge amount of growth. But there is almost certainly significant unmet need out there. And I would love to be able to meet it and grow. But, in order to grow, you need to be, well positioned to do that. We've got a brilliant volunteer base, but we would need more volunteers if we grow. We would need a greater supply of clothes if we grow. We would need, obviously, more staff as well and more funding. So all of those things are things that we need to think about. There's lots of challenges, but we're really keen to get there.
And we'll obviously put in the show notes the opportunity for listeners to get involved and to support the organisation in all of the different ways. This has been such an insightful conversation, Anna, and it really set up this series in terms of going into the detail of how SmartWorks operates and how empowering it can be for women to go through your services and get the job at the end of it. What would be your one message about SmartWorks that you want to leave listeners with?
Oh, that's a tough question, isn't it? I mean, I would say that if you're a woman and you're unemployed and looking for work, contact us. Do get in touch. Hopefully there will be a service near you where you can go in person, but we've got virtual services as well. So I would say don't be a stranger. We've got lots of different ways we can support and we're really keen to do so.
And I always finish by asking if you're stressed or well dressed.
Probably neither. So I feel quite good at the moment, so I'm not too stressed, fortunately. And am I well dressed? I don't know. I feel good. I feel good.
You
That's
feel
the main
good.
thing.
Well, that absolutely is the main thing. I think it centres around everything we've discussed in this episode, that well-dressed is absolutely a mindset. And it's so important when people are going through a career transition or going back into employment, they have that mindset. And obviously SmartWorks does an incredible job of helping to set people up for success. Anna, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I hope this got you thinking about what well-dressed means for you. If you enjoyed the show, jump onto the platform and give us a review. Thanks for listening to Stressed But Well Dressed. I'm your host, Dahlia Stroud. Have a great day. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I love your outfit.